We're going to be learning about the text-to-speech SketchMaker program. However, I'm also going to be focusing on how you can utilize the automated audio from this software for other purposes. For example, if you use Explaindio or VideoMaker FX or something like that to create your videos, and maybe you're using some music audio currently to go along with your videos, you can actually replace that audio with automated speech from this software. And so that's going to be one of my main focuses tonight in teaching you guys how to do that. But I do want to focus on the software itself for a few to ensure that you can use it to actually get what you need out of it to get to the point where you can start using the audio for other software and other purposes. So I have the software here open on my screen. I have a basic Amazon product video here that I have created with a couple of different slides utilizing both text that is on the screen, text that is being converted to audio, and also graphics like a product image graphic. In the software itself, there are really two main ways that you can convert text into audio. One of those is with an image, and the other is with text itself. It's good to know about this because the images, you can essentially add any text that you want to and have it converted into speech. However, when you're adding text on, like you see here on my screen, it's actually going to be speaking exactly what is written on your screen. Now, obviously this software just came out, and I really hope that they will continue to improve it over time, because if they could expand it with some more features and some more capabilities, I could see myself using this completely on its own. But as it is, I really still kind of prefer to use something like Explaindio because I can create a much higher quality video in terms of what people are going to see on my screen. And then this can be used to create the automated speech for me, so I don't have to actually do the voiceover work for it. And this should be something that a lot of Amazon affiliates find interesting, because not everybody wants to record their own voice. They might not be comfortable with it, they might not like the sound of their own voice, or maybe they don't want to have to hire an expensive professional voiceover to actually do that work for them. So that's the purpose of this whole training, is to help you get over that obstacle, to use this software to get that speech out of it, and to be able to apply it in other ways. Now, the text that I have here on my screen, as I mentioned before, this is getting converted into audio, but it's exactly what is written on my screen. If you go up to the Add Text tab here, you're adding in a new text box, and then you simply type in here what you want to show up on your screen. You can do things like changing the font that goes along with it. One of the main things that I wanted to point out with adding text and the voices to the videos themselves is my preferred voice. They actually have a lot of different voices available, and they have different languages. But for most of you, you'll probably be focusing on one of the US or one of the UK voices. Now, I've tried them all out, and I actually like the UK Brendan voice the most. I think it sounds the most natural in terms of there are a lot of times when you really can't quite tell whether it's an automated voice or a real person. Whereas with some of the other voices, it is a little more obvious in certain situations when you're throwing more complicated words into it, or maybe trying to use brand names and other words that the automated software may not actually recognize, but it still makes an effort to put that into actual speech. So I found the Brendan voice to really be my preferred voice. So if you select your Brendan voice down here at the bottom, or whichever one you prefer to go with, and then you click on Add Voice up here, it'll convert that into the voice that you want. You can see up top here I have English UK Brendan for the voice that's being spoken. You could also do some kind of back and forth commentary with this type of software. Since you can utilize more than one voice, you could kind of have two different people speaking different parts as commentary in your video. And that would actually make for a pretty interesting video compared with what you are typically seeing out there on the internet. Now when you're adding images, let me flip over here to my second slide. I have this image here, and this is actually an Amazon product image direct from Amazon. You can just go to the page and download the product image and upload it directly into the software. Now one of the positive things that I like about this capability is the fact that it simply makes it easy to insert just a normal image into your picture. It's not going to be a sketch image where it gets animated, drawn on the screen, but other software like Explaindio, for example, actually makes this a little bit difficult, putting just a standard image in the page. So if you click on the Add Images button, you have your normal SVG images, and these are all of your sketch images that are included in the software. But if you click this top bar right here that says Load External Images, you get these four buttons. And this Load Regular Images button is what is used to just load a standard image into your slide. Now you can also try to add other SVG images. For example, if you have Explaindio or other sketch programs, they likely have SVG images already. And you can load those up into this software. However, I have found that some images that I create myself, for example, if I try to take this picture here and convert it into an SVG image, it really doesn't seem to work quite as intended in this software. It'll still sketch out the lines, but it won't color the whole thing in when it's finished, like Explaindio will. So in that regard, if I'm wanting to use other SVG images from Explaindio or another software, I would really prefer to just focus on making the video in that software to simply make it easier. But there may be some instances where you would actually prefer to use this software over other titles. It's just really about figuring out what features are strong points for certain software titles and what features might have a little bit holding them back. So as I mentioned before, when you are adding text into one of these slides here, you can either be doing it with the text that's shown on the screen itself, or you can do this through an image. Adding an image to the page like this allows me to use text that is not actually seen on the screen. And this really seems to be the only way to get this software to speak something without actually showing it on the screen. So keeping this in mind, you kind of have to use that when you are planning your video. Anything that you want to be spoken is essentially going to have to be shown on the video, unless you embed that speech within an image. So you may need to collect more images than you had planned on to be able to actually have all the speech in your video without having it all shown on the screen, because you're limited to the amount of text that you can actually put into one single image. But there are some tactics that you can use to kind of get around this limitation. For example, if you get an image, yes, Rand, that's actually what I was about to say. If you get a really small blank image, it could be transparent or white, and load it up in here, you can then put text to go along with that image and have it in the appropriate place in your slide without actually having all that text being shown on the screen. Now you can show text on your screen without actually having it spoken. Up here at the top, Tahoe Tack Black Knight, this is just a title for my slide, but I don't have it spoken. I have this mute voice checkbox up here, and I can actually prevent it from being converted into speech. So there is a way to show text without speaking it, but the only way to speak text without showing it is by embedding it within a video. Now, one of the other limitations that I have found with this software, at least currently, and I could definitely expect for this to be something that they fix in the future, is timing. That's a good point also, Rand. He was saying you can also make the text white. I actually played around with that a little bit, and the way that it displays the text, it really didn't seem to work out very good that way. I had some instances where the hand was sitting there sketching on the screen, and it's not sketching anything because it's white text that you can't see, but it's sitting there trying to speak it, just as an example. So I found really the easiest way to go to be an image. It is possible to still go with the white text method, but you end up with some little minor issues like that that can kind of affect what's actually being seen on the video. So now with the timing, I found that if you have a script essentially for a single slide, it's a little difficult to kind of space out that script, to put some natural pauses in the speech. You can slow the voice of the speech down using the tools down at the bottom here, but ultimately that really doesn't allow you to space out the speech in terms of not having speech going on for, even if it's a period of a couple of seconds, just to have a little bit of a natural pause within your audio. So I played around with a number of different techniques to get around this limitation, and again, I really think that this particular limitation will be gotten rid of as time goes on, because I do believe it is something that's pretty important in terms of a video creator to be able to time out your video to extend slides or space out audio, for example. So I can see them fixing it. But for now, I found two different things can be done to actually space out your audio. And one of those is to simply put a blank text box and don't put any text in it at all. So I have a number of these, as you can see, going throughout the text for this slide as I proceed down. An excellent choice for beginners I have right here, and then I have a blank box. And then I go to my next one, available in 14 to 17 inch sizes. This blank box here causes a slight pause. It seems to be maybe about a half to a full second or so, but it's enough to make it a little more natural sounding when I play my entire slide. I'm not sure if my audio will actually end up coming through on the webinar or not here. But you can kind of see as it gets to the end of the line, I have a slight pause. And that slight pause is being accomplished from these blank boxes. You could possibly do some other things like that, commas or dots. I also experimented with using white text as well for creating a delay. My main issue with using anything in the box here instead of just keeping it blank is, again, more of the visual aspect of it, where the pen is showing up on the screen, for example, seems to change whenever you actually have something in this box. Whereas if the box is completely blank, then the pen doesn't move at all. It just pauses at the end of the line here for a second or so before it proceeds on to the next one. So again, I hope this is something that they would correct. It wouldn't be very hard to just add a couple of timing controls into these text or video boxes. And that actually brings me to the second method of introducing some kind of timing, which is the images. I'll be covering this a little bit more when I proceed on. I actually have a second project that I want to load up for you guys in a second here, but images can also be used to space things out. If you notice the normal image here, it doesn't have any timing controls on it. However, if I were to add in, I'll just pick a random SVG image. If I add a sketch image, there is a delay control down at the bottom. However, I have done a lot of playing around with this because I initially figured, okay, this has got to be the easy way to actually control timing in this. But I'm not sure if it's, I assume, a bug in the software or something. It really doesn't seem to make much of a difference when I adjust this delay. I've put it up at an obscenely high number and it really seems to skip in the same amount of time. So again, I think this is something that they've already identified and should be correcting, but at least for now it doesn't seem to have a major effect. However, the SVG image itself does cause a delay. So if you can do an SVG image and have it shown on the screen, again, it's going to have the pen actually sketching it, even if you make it into a white color, for example. But if you're doing this for purely audio purposes, then it might not matter what's actually showing on your screen. I'm going to go ahead and load up this next project here, so I can talk about that in a little more detail, because this other project here actually has that type of a setup. So as you can see on my screen, I have simply added in a whole bunch of SVG images. And it's the same one. It's just an arrow. And it honestly doesn't matter which one you try to choose. The point of this is to allow you to input any amount of text that you want to. So you have an image, you put some of your text to go along with it, and then you can use other SVG images to cause a pause in between your text that is being spoken. But again, the delay, if this was working perfectly in terms of if I could adjust this to a small amount or a large amount and cause that amount of a pause in between, then it would be perfect. I would be able to make that timing exactly how I need it. And the reason why the timing can be important, especially if you're just working on the audio here, is because you might want it to match up with the timing that you have set up for a video that you've created in, say, Explaindio. If you have a 1 minute long slideshow, then you need a minute of audio to go along with it. But then you also have your individual slides within your video, and certain text is going to relate to certain slides. So you want that audio to match up correctly so the timing seems natural as it's going through the video. Otherwise, you're talking about something that's going on a slide that was already passed, or it's on a slide that hasn't even come up yet. So you can put some basic timing in here by adding in SVG images. You can add in blank text like I was showing you before. And this allows you to create your entire script. So I have a basic setup here where I just have some text and a blank, and I continue on like that throughout my entire script. And this script is created to go along with an Explaindio video that I'm using. So the actual animation itself, obviously you have no need for the video that's going to get created from this. But what you're really interested in is the underlying audio from this. And this software is sold with the rights to where you can do anything you want to with the audio and the videos that you're producing. So you can take the audio from these videos and strip them out and use them for any other purpose that you want to. So that also brings me to my next point, which is going to be pulling the actual audio from the video. And then I'm going to show you guys how to actually apply that to other projects that you might be working on. So if you want to use this software as it is, you can do like I was doing initially, adding images, adding text that will be sketched on the screen, and you can even add sketch images as well to create an entire video that way that includes the actual speech with it. But then you can also just set up SVG images, or you can even do the text control. I set this one up with the SVG images in hopes that this delay setting would work correctly. But the text control could also still accomplish the same thing. And this again would be just for audio purposes. The other major thing you need to think about when you're setting this up again is your timing. Look at how long your entire video is going to be, and then look at how long your script ends up, and also consider the individual slides. If you need to adjust the timing, you can add more blank boxes or more blank SVG images with no text to cause slight delays. You could add more of those. You could have 2 or 3 of these in between each text box if you needed an even longer delay. However, you can also think about this the other way around. You can start with your audio like this and try to conform your video to the timing of your audio. So it really might just kind of depend on what your goals are in terms of what software you're using and what parts of each software you really prefer to be using. So now when it comes to stripping the audio out, I recommend using onlineconvert.com. There is a hyphen in between the words online and convert. This site has a ton of different converters on it that may be useful for you for different purposes. However, the one that I am interested in using is up in the top under Audio Converter. I want Convert to MP3. And while there's a go button there, you don't even have to click on it. It just takes you straight to the page. So what you want to do on this page is you want to upload the video that this software creates. So you go down here and you click on Record, and you save this video to a file. Then you can come over here to Online Convert, and you can upload this video right here. Simply find it and select it, and then all you have to do is click on Convert File. Now, the settings that they give you here, you really want these settings to kind of try to match the settings of your original file. So I've been dropping my audio bitrate down to 96 because this is more closer to what the actual bitrate is for the original. Too much of a change in these different settings. For example, these are set to no change. If you change this stuff, you can end up with an audio file that simply doesn't sound right in a number of different ways. So I use 96, and this sounds correct for my conversions. Just click on Convert File, and then you get an MP3 file. The MP3 file that you're going to get from this conversion is nothing but audio. So you can then take this MP3 audio file, save it to your computer, and you can use this in a variety of different ways. Now I have a copy of this already, so I don't need to save this conversion again. But I'm going to open up Explaindio for a moment now. So this is my product review video in Explaindio. If you picked up Explaindio through me, this is the actual template file that I provide as part of that bonus. So instead of using this template file and creating your video and using music to go along with it, you can add in your voice by simply clicking on the checkbox for voice here and clicking on Browse, and then finding the MP3 audio file that you downloaded from that conversion, and then simply click on Open. Now this adds the audio into not just one slide, but it adds it into the entire project. So even if I were to go over to this video, I still have audio playing in this slide, even though I'm a couple slides away from where I inserted it at. The reason why this is important is because in order to use audio with Explaindio in this manner, you have to have your audio file exactly how you need it when you upload it, and it needs to be all in one piece. You can't upload a piece for this slide and a piece for this slide, and so on. I do wish that it would allow it to have the option of working that way, so you could space out the timing of your audio, of your voiceover a little bit better like that. But unfortunately, it does not allow that, so you kind of have to work around that fact. So you need your audio all in one single file. And so that's why the timing of that audio becomes very important, because you're not going to be able to adjust the audio in Explaindio. Now I am going to show you a tactic in just a few to get around that simple fact, to where you could still use a video from something like Explaindio, and you could still use the audio from the text-to-speech software. However, you wouldn't have to worry about the timing initially, because you would be manually editing it. Again, that's something that I'll get to in just a few. So I mentioned earlier with timing that you can be adjusting your audio to try to get the timing to line up with your video, but you can also try to adjust your video to get it to match your audio. If you're using Explaindio, especially if you're using one of my templates, down at the bottom here where it says delay slide viewpoint and extend slide, these settings are going to have delays on them by default. I actually already decreased mine. I want to say this one was maybe around 90 something frames, and I believe this last one was maybe around 48 or something like that. So you have a little bit of a built-in buffer zone here in terms of the timing of these slides. So if you needed to shorten them or extend them a little bit to get your audio to fit correctly, you might be able to just make some minor adjustments to your video, especially if you can't get things to match up perfect because of the limitations with the text-to-speech software and the timing. Maybe you need a half a second delay, but the best you can get with that software is a 1 second delay. You can add in some extra time with Explaindio, for example, to fill in those extra gaps. Or you could again be removing time to help fill in those gaps too. Now the same kind of thing can really be done for these sketch scenes as well. You have timing that corresponds to each different sketch scene. However, the timing for these is more related to the animation. So you have to decide if you want to extend or shorten a certain slide. You have to determine, okay, which animation parts do I want to either be extending or shortening as well. So you have, at least with this template, a number of these all in the middle that could also be extended or shortened. And then back to the end, you have a standard slide again, which can be extended or shortened in the same way as well. Now, I definitely recognize that having to adjust the timing in the text-to-speech software, and then maybe even again having to adjust the timing in Explaindio, I can certainly understand how that can become a little time-consuming. Unless you feel like you can line the audio and the video up without having to really put a lot of effort into it, use that method if you can. But if it's gonna take a lot of work, if you're finding yourself having to go through every tiny little slide and every bit of audio that you're adding to it and fine-tune, you may actually be better off publishing your video initially with no audio whatsoever. So if you take your video from Explaindio, for example, and you go to Create Video and export it, you can get your video file. And then you also have your separate audio file from the text-to-speech software. Well, then you can take those two files. Let me close a couple of these down so I can open up something else here. You can take those two files and manually edit them together. And there are certainly a lot of ways that you can do this. There are professional software titles that cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars that can be used for this. Adobe Premiere Pro, for example, is one that I find myself using a lot simply because I do the whole Adobe software suite. But I didn't want to have to recommend something that you had to go out and buy to be able to do this. And while I know this isn't going to cover absolutely everybody, because this is not going to be something that works on Macintosh computers, this should cover pretty much anybody using Windows. You can get a program called Windows Movie Maker, and it's bundled with Windows Live Essentials. And it's completely free, and you can use this to edit your audio and your video together. So you can start out by simply finding the video that you've created with Explaindio. You can zoom in and out over here on the right. I personally like to zoom in a little bit and try to fill up my screen with as much of this as I can. And then I'll go up here to add music. And I can find the MP3 audio file that I converted. Again, this is from the text-to-speech software. And I open this too. And so now I have my video here at the top, and I have my audio down underneath it. And you can see how they match up throughout the entire thing. But once I get to the end here, I have no more audio running. And that's because I didn't time out the audio to perfectly match this video. However, you can now, in this software, you can take the different parts of audio, which are actually really easy to identify if you look at the little wave pattern in here. Every time it goes up, this is when there is sound occurring. So then you can easily notice your blank spots and the parts where you have actual audio speech happening. And then you can adjust your video accordingly. Now if you notice here, if I click on one of these pieces, it changes it in terms of it drags it to a different location in my video. However, my audio is all in one piece. So what I actually need to do is to split up my audio. If I take my black bar here and click it and drag it and get it to a point where I want to split something at, and then right-click, you have to make sure you're actually right-clicking on this audio tab. Otherwise, you'll end up splitting your video. So if you right-click here and then go down to split, then you can see it actually splits your audio into different pieces. So now I have this piece right here that was split off, and I have the larger chunk that's still intact. So I can move around individual pieces of my audio here to get them to line up accordingly with my video. And I can even remove things by simply clicking on it and hitting the delete key on my keyboard. So now I can take this video and continue splitting it up like this, where I have my different audio pieces in an individual little section, so I can rearrange them as needed. So now obviously I'm not going to do the entire file while we're sitting here, But if you look here, in between my audio, I have some blank parts. I don't have to keep these because there's nothing actually playing within those blank areas. So now I have a couple of different sections here to work on. I have my intro audio, and then this actually goes right up against this because that is the audio for the entire first slide. So you can see now, whereas this audio stretched way past where this first slide was about to end, it's now coming to an end right as my slide is. So then my next section of audio, I can do the same thing here. Split off the part that is relevant, and I can find where I want that to begin, maybe a little ways into my sketch here, and then I simply drag and drop it to where I want that audio to begin. So continuing throughout my entire file like this, I can choose exactly where I want my audio to show up. So now I don't have to worry about fine-tuning the timing of any of it. I can simply just drag and drop here to get my audio to fit accordingly. So you can see how using this method would be possibly faster than having to do all the fine-tuning in the text-to-speech software and then possibly again in your video software. But this gives you total control over the actual timing of everything here. And you can even put slight delays in, and you can kind of figure out where you want different parts of text to show up by simply previewing your video over here. You get to hear the audio along with it as you're watching it, and simply continue splitting this up and lining it up with the appropriate parts of your video. So once you're finished with your editing, let's say I've gone through my entire file like this and lined up my different audio pieces with my video pieces. Then all I need to do is actually save my movie. Now, there is a little tool here where you can actually publish these directly to YouTube, where this is going to upload the video straight from your computer to YouTube, and it's going to do it through this Movie Maker program. However, I typically will save my movie first just to keep a hard copy on my computer in case I want to use it for other purposes, and then I'll go over to YouTube and upload it. Or you can even do other tactics with these videos before putting them on YouTube. For example, using Google Plus Hangouts. You could save your movie, play your movie in a Google Plus Hangout, and then publish that onto YouTube. And the whole reason you would want to even take the time to do something like that is that publishing your video through the Google Plus Hangout can actually give you faster and even better search rankings with your videos themselves. So when it comes to saving your movie here, you have a number of different options. You have all of these pre-designed things for high-def display, for example. This one, while it can be a good option, you really need to pay attention to the display size that you see when you hover over one of these boxes. This particular one says 1920 by 1080. What you're really interested in is not necessarily publishing the video in the highest possible quality, but you want to be publishing it so it matches your original video. Well, Explaindio publishes videos by default it is in a high def resolution, but it is not 1080p. It's actually 1280 by 720. It's the 720p high def display. So this recommended, I'm not sure if this will automatically show up here for everybody or not, or if this is based on other profiles and stuff that I've created in this software. But this particular one is showing me a display size of 1280 by 720, and that will match up with my Explaindio video. So whatever the source video is, that's what you want to be publishing in to keep everything looking okay. If for some reason you can't find what you want up here at the top, you do have a ton of other options going down here. Some of these are designed for YouTube, for example. The YouTube one is actually not a bad one. It has the 1280 by 720, but it uses a lower bit rate, and this will actually end up reducing the file size. If you find that the default recommended settings, maybe it's creating file sizes that are a couple hundred megabytes per video or something like that. It can really get hard to keep a large number of those on your computer. I have like 3 hard drives hooked up to my computer that are just filled with training videos and stuff that I've created over the years. So using this YouTube format down here, as long as you're using Explaindio or another video that is 1280 by 720, this will give you a lower file size in the end, if that is of concern for you. You can also choose to create your own custom setting. However, unless you really know what all this information means in terms of bit rates and resolutions, I really would not try to create your own custom setting. I would try to go with something that you can find in the existing list here, because you can really end up wasting a lot of time this way, experimenting with those different ways of saving the video. You save it once, and then maybe you figure out that the resolution wasn't right, or maybe the file size is incredibly large and you wanted it to be smaller. Well, when you're going through this process of saving the movie, it's going to take a little bit of time for this software to actually convert that into a physical file. So you don't want to be doing too much experimenting, especially if you have a longer video file, because some of them can actually end up taking hours to convert. However, I'm really more referring to, I guess, a lot of the typical training videos that I'll do that are hitting an hour or 2 hours in length. Those can take a couple of hours to convert. But your typical Amazon product videos that are only going to be a minute, maybe a couple of minutes long at the most, those should not take an enormous amount of time, but it's still not something that you really want to be sitting there repeating over and over again. So you should be able to see how you can take the text-to-speech software and use it to create any audio that you want, and then export that audio for use with essentially any kind of video project. Even if you're not using Explaindio, if you have any other software title that you use to create the video part, it still works this exact same way, except instead of using Explaindio to create your video, you create it with your chosen software. But then you can still load any of those videos into this Windows Movie Maker. And it's possible that there may even be something like this available for Mac users. It's obviously not going to be this because this is specifically made by Microsoft. However, it's honestly just been too many years since I've even used a Mac to know whether it's bundled with something like this or whether Apple provides some type of free software. But even if they don't, you may still be able to simply find something like this on the internet. You don't need really powerful video editing capabilities for something like this. All you really need to be able to do is split up your audio and your video files. In the same way I was doing the audio here, let's say maybe you figured out that there was a part of this Explaindio video that you didn't want anymore. Maybe you needed to remove part of it to get the audio to match up correctly. You can split your video in the exact same manner that you do your audio. You just right-click on the video instead. And then you can have different pieces of your video and actually rearrange the order of them. So in this manner, you're not limited to just one video file or one audio file either. You can load up multiple videos all at the same time to where you have one video playing and then you have another video down at the end. Maybe you have a standard introduction video or a standard closing video that you want to have showing at the beginning or the end of all the videos that you're creating. Software like this, even though it's very simple video editing software, it still gives you that power because you can add in a second video onto the end. And you can already have that pre-made, so you don't have to make it over and over and over again for every new video that you create. You just have a little video you plop in at the end and a video that you plop in at the beginning, for example. To do things like if you have a website set up, like here at the end of my video, how I have a little closing saying click to read or review on this particular product. Well, if this didn't need to change from one video to the next, if I was just promoting a generic website, like click here to see more information on horse riding for whatever kind of horse riding site I might build that would have this particular saddle promoted on it. I could just have a generic closing like that I simply repeat for all of my videos. Things like that can help to reduce your workload while keeping the marketing promotional aspects of your video intact. So again, this free software is something that any Windows users should be able to get. It's called Windows Movie Maker, and it's actually bundled with something called Windows Live Essentials that includes a number of other things like a mail program, for example. Now, if anybody has any questions for me that they would like to ask having to do with any of this training here this evening, please feel free to ask in the chat box at any time, and I'd be more than happy to help clarify anything for you or answer any additional questions that you may have.